What we're going to do here is we got some more things there for mystical items, some more Sasquatch encounters, strange cryptid cats, and a lot of strange mystical items and different things like that. So, and a continuation on about a little bit about this, as well as this is an unknown cryptid, but it's known in my region since at least my time from the 60s, and I'm sure it was way before. There's these stories of these walking fish that have been caught by anglers. I got a recent report actually. This fellow about what was it, about 3 years ago. He was out with somebody, and this guy apparently caught this like about 3 foot long fish that had legs on it, right? And this is a local sort of a thing here. In the Reno Falls, when they used to allow them to fish down at the bottom of it, they would have a lot of stories. They called it the crack creature, which is kind of amusing, right? But the reason why is that it was in the falls, there was these cracks in the walls and stuff, and these things sometimes would be seen coming out of them. So maybe they, I don't know, hide in there or whatever. But I suspect that they're tiger salamanders, right? But of epic size, and these people think they're a fish, right? And that sort of thing like that. But some of these descriptions are really strange, right? Like where it's more like this kind of thing, because this guy was telling me, no, it looked like a real normal fish, right? Like so. I don't know. There's some strange things out there, right? But that but it's just we'll be talking about that later. A bunch of other different things, and just some finishing off of stuff that got cut off and that sort of thing like that. But when I showed you the last part too there of a real authentic giant eel film, it's 100% real. So if Joe Nichols and all them want to debate about it, as we can clearly, as I'm showing you right here, right? There's numerous kinds of eels, but I mean, unless some wayward short fin eel got off course here and that sort of thing, but likely it's a long fin sort of eel, right? Okay, and this sort of thing like this. Now here, I told you years ago I saw one that was about 7 feet long, and this creature's roughly in the proportions of what we saw dead floating past us, and this was caught off the Texas, found dead off the Texas coast just not that long ago. So look at the size of this moose, right? So this is the biggest photograph I've ever seen in the North American market of an Angola, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, and look at the big jaws on this dude already, and look at how small he is compared to that dude, right? Like, and if you haven't seen the film, watch it on my second show, right? Of the part threes of this, right? Sort of thing like that. So I wasn't able to find, for some reason, even any photographs I have. I can't really show you exactly because the guy's facing the wrong way. But here you can clearly see, okay, here's an Angola down here, okay? Now line that up with that. I mean, seriously, Joe Nichols or any of these skeptics or that. I mean, clearly this is a giant eel. I mean, you can clearly see, can you not see the caudal fin at the end? Can you not see the sort of top ridge dorsal fin-like structure here coming down, right? And then it goes underneath a little bit and it goes around. And depending on the one, I've seen them where they seem to be a little bit where the creature's head is shorter and the fin's actually going a little bit further towards its head, depending on the sort of one, right? And that sort of thing like that. But typically it would be around in this range. Clearly all matching everything on this eel here. I mean, I don't see how there's an argument worldwide. This, even though my shows are low budget, this needs to be put on news worldwide. It should have been years ago. I saw this film, what was it? 4 or 5 years ago at least or something like that, but I never got around to doing a show about it and that. And I mean, I've known this, like I said, because and this isn't the only time. I mean, there's another hilarious story that is so insane. I was guiding out this group, and I'd use this ancient old heavy duty a 10 weight fly rod to fight sturgeon with an old mooching reel, right? Or a big fly reel sometimes, but I'd use it with normal line on it, and I'd put these big 4 or 5 odd hooks on it, and a pound, 2 pound bait, and hook a big sturgeon sometimes. But one of them I hooked into that we'll talk about another time. That is such an insane story. It was really entertainment for these people that was in there, and seeing how insane I am that I refuse to let this go. Right? So I mean, so I ran across some extraordinary things, but because the limitations of typical freshwater things. My skill playing is so good. That's why I don't. The knots isn't going to break. So if anything goes, it's going to be a malfunction of the hook eventually. And depending on the rod that you happen to have the luck or bad luck with of hooking it with, right? I mean, if it's too stiff, eventually the thing's gonna start straightening out every big run that he does and everything else, and the poor thing's gonna go, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I know I could go to that Belkins, use some kind of European fish that they would have around there, a coarse fish of some sort, and be able to eels can smell extremely well, and that sort of thing, and they're like a catfish in some kinds of ways where they'll eat a lot of bottom like garbage debris besides hunting regular fish, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I would be chumming this place with this sort of blood like sort of stuff, and actually starting way above these dams, the top ones, and having stuff way out there that wherever this creature comes from, they're coming from probably the top dam. They go over and then they keep going down and then eventually wiggle their way back up somehow, right? So if you had it in the correct sort of areas of enough chum like stuff of the blood and everything to convince the guy, and you get him now down to this bottom one because you don't want him out in the open sort of giant one, that it would be easier to land this monster in this body of water. It's smaller, right? Eventually the guy, after towing you around for so many hours, he's gonna start to go down, right? So the only thing is I don't know how rocky or jaggedy it is out there, right? And how deep it is, because it's better that it's deeper, and then he can't, it's harder for him to keep going down to the bottom and staying there. But I mean, I've heard stories of these, like where these guys are using huge, heavy lines, commercial lines and stuff, and even with giant, hardened hooks and everything, 7, 8, like real monster stuff here, and still these things have been straightened out sometimes, right? So I mean, clearly the lake monster mystery, for sure, because of their habit of when they are chasing fish, sometimes they will actually stick their head out of the water. Not for long, though. And this is the difference between if somebody says that they seen a neck came up, right, and now it's going along like this is not an eel. In these cases, this is some other either cryptic, plesiosaur like sort of ones out there, possibly, or other some kind of one like that, right? A sort of thing, or these mobile lake monster ones, right? Where they're going up and down, like the Ogopogo and this kind of like. I believe that even possibly Ogopogo may leave in and out of that, and many of these lakes, right? And that's why people see them for a while. Many fishermen could be out there and never get a sonar sighting ever. And another thing with for the kinds that are giant eels reported, right? People don't realize I used to use this technique in the Rideau Canal in the late 60s and 70s and stuff when they were way more common. Just sometimes I like fishing for them and I test things. So what I do is I put like all kinds of worms like on an area that was right beside where these gravelly sort of little humps that they'd have out there. It seemed that this is a spot that they like to feed on, and just like carp do and other sorts of species, they don't like feeding right in the muck itself, but eels will bury themselves down in the daytime. But if you got a chum out there of broken worms or any bloody smelly sort of fish like thing, they smell this, I guess, under the mud somehow, and you would actually be able to get them to come out and start feeding, right? And that, so like I said, I don't see them nowadays, but mind you, I rarely use bait sorts of things except for carp and catfish sometimes, and this is when you would hook one, right? But I mean, I don't do it as remotely as much as I used to, and so I'm convinced from even sightings I've heard people have hooked one in recent years, and that the eels certainly are still amongst us here in my region in the Ottawa River, right? Same with that they claim tiger salamanders are extinct, and that's not true. I saw an Asian guy, he didn't want to, give it to. I couldn't converse with him enough to get this off of him because this guy didn't speak English at all. But clearly, he had a tiger salamander. They bite in the spring. I used to sometimes catch three, four in one day. Sometimes at these locking systems and falls and things like that. You would cast it out there, little worms and things like that, and these guys would bite it, right? And some of them were pretty big, like well over a foot, and that sort of thing like that. And they used to allow them you to use them as bait. And I mean, the monster muskies and giant bass, walleyes, and different ones that would smash these, right? Or even mimics of them, like plastic salamanders, are fantastic, right? And that sort of thing like that. But there's these mysteries out there, and why scientists keep denying this, why there's these shows keep saying that this must be the Loch Ness monster. Why does not people want to be educated? It really truly is, and a giant Angola species exists out there. There is no question about it. Therefore, you should stop calling all your ancient relatives for a gazillion years here, and all these people that have told you these lake monster stories worldwide, many of them were probably telling you the truth. And that's it. I mean, but I can see if the creature comes up for just a little bit and he's far off, that does give you the Nessie-like effect. So Joe Nichols should start using this instead of that it's a log every time. I mean, clearly this creature is alive. Clearly that's not a CGI film. Clearly it's all so beautifully natural, exactly how a monster like that one would hunt. You even have a whole, there was... on the Thames River, there's this water filtration plant way up, and it's all pure fresh water and that. And these guys had this thing in there for about a week. This one that they measured for sure was about 25 or 30 feet long in this sort of range that they could get close enough, but they could never get it to lay straight out. So they might be off by so many feet, right? But the thing was certainly way bigger than anyone known to science, and possibly in the range of that monster that we have on the film in the Balkans, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, I mean, clearly, if you reverse this, right, I think there's like, I just didn't have something with me that could do that right second. But, I mean, if you switched it around and now lay that up against this dude, it's 100%. There is no argument about this anymore. This is either eunuch eels that somehow, stay in certain areas and they can live hundreds of years, or that there's an unknown side species that looks identical to a long or short fin eel, depending on where it is, right? Like the Lake Michigan monsters and this kind of thing, right? So these guys exist. There is no question about this. There's even on Lake Michigan, besides the wonderful film that Tim filmed, and I thank the heavens that he did, because again, it's another proof of this sort of thing. If you want to be honest and actually have expertise on Angolas, real experts on the subject would agree that it really is an Angola. However, most people, because either their eyesight is bad or whatever their problem is, they just can't believe in such things. They always use a plastic pipe or some ridiculous thing that it cannot be, right? So I'm telling you, there's a film that makes me so sad. This guy couldn't be pulling this off, because I don't believe anybody's that sick. I really don't. Like, I mean, if the guy's that sick, wow. I mean, so I think that this guy truly posted this, like he said. He had this wonderful little doggy, and the doggy goes out Lake Michigan, and he's swimming, and you see this giant black shadow coming along, and he grabs the poor little dude. The most saddest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I froze the frames underneath, and you actually see the eyes and the mouth of the creature opening up and grabbing on him. I don't think this guy was able to fake that. It looks very natural. The guy was in tears. He lost his little buddy, and all kinds of children. Even a teacher was fired because so many kids said that they saw these giant Lake Michigan eels and this sort of thing. I have several other photos that aren't rarely known. Not too many people know about them that were filmed on marinas and things where you can clearly see monsters like this. In two of them, where the guy's going by the docks, and clearly one of them is like, yeah, like half or more of this giant dock that's long that easily. So there's no way that this eel's under this particular one under about 10 feet, and the one that Tim filmed was like probably I think I don't ever want to misquote him because I don't have this stuff with me here, but I think it was around what he figured from those this pier with the strange arc like sort of pillar like things they use to hold it up, right? Sort of thing. The He thinks that I think he said it was might have been about 25 feet or so. So I mean, these guys really, and because we have this film here, other one, and this one's not debatable. I mean, I don't that one I can see because it's a bit blurry and there was a big storm, and so of course a Joe Nichols is going to come up with some flaky answer like that, right? But I mean, the real reality is Tim's one of the luckiest people in the world. He actually filmed this thing. I would love to start fishing in this area all the time. I would start chumming this place if they allow me, right? Whatever the rules are in that particular local spot, and get heavy duty saltwater stuff here that you could battle a decent sized shark with and that sort of thing like that, and the proper hooks that could take a 300-400 pound creature without straightening out, and bingo, we're in business, man. I'm positive you could get one of these guys, because if that guy goes by there once, he may use this as part of his Lake Michigan hunting zone, right? And that sort of thing like that. So we'll cover that another time there, but I mean, clearly, lake monsters of at least giant eels exist. Lake monsters of seals that are wayward exist. By the way, I finally found a place that can transfer my film into something that I can put on a USB, and so I'm going to only put about half of the film because I don't like the fact that everybody's gonna, you know what I mean, all over the place, and it's my film, right? I mean, and that sort of thing like that. So I'm only gonna release like about half that matters, the important part, right, and that sort of thing like that. But at least it hasn't been seen in ages. It was witnessed by several million that used to watch. It was put on. I put it on this one show. It was put on and things like that. And so it hasn't been seen in ages. That like that, sort of thing like that. So I'm gonna have that up probably next month. Sometime when I get a chance to bring that in. And I found a couple of super old mystery camera rolls that I didn't know that I had that could have some monster fish on it. Because normally the only way that I would take photographs most of the time, if it was something pretty decent or unusual, rare, right, and that sort of thing like that. So I'm hoping something weird's on there, right? I mean, a real old monster muskie that I've lost track of, no photo of it anymore, or whatever, right? And that sort of thing like that. There could be some real monsters. So if I see anything really juicy, but I'm terrified that maybe the reason I didn't get these like developed right was because it might have been that my mother or some wacky thing was getting me to take pictures for them, and of course I mean for me then back then you got to be on a budget, right? I don't want to be paying a bunch of money for photos of somebody say waving hi to Granny when I already have 80,000 of them, right? Like so that right. So I could be that I might have at the time said, well, yeah, I'd rather get a picture on right now that they're not in a hurry. We already have 100 pictures, anyways. It's all good, right? Because it's not anything massively important. It wasn't their birthday or any kind of thing. Where it's just some character to come over, right? And you think, so it could be, right? Sort of thing like that. So I'm hoping not. It would be nicer if it was some monster fish on it or that sort of thing. Or there was a couple of photos of the because they were all taken over a bridge of the Ogopogo that I don't remember because there were several of us in a car, and I kept saying, quick, 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 photos, photos, right? Like, because people, we had like cameras with us, right? And that because we're doing all this tourist things. So I got a couple of blurry shots in, but that sort of thing like that. So uh, these giant eel and this up and down mobile lake monster serpentine like thing 100% exists. No doubt about it. From ancient records of all the Great Lakes, many sightings in the 1800s. Not because they were more common then. Way less damming, way less of pollution, way more fish to eat. Possibly even the atmosphere is even a little bit better than it is now, and all these things can factor to grow and a giantism gene and everything. They exist, right? Like I mean, this you can't say this guy doesn't exist, right? I mean, and so if he's that big, do you really believe he's the biggest, right? No. So that's what I'm saying, right? So I mean, for sure they actually like fully existed, right? Like there's no ifs or buts about that sort of thing, right? So, but anyways, that and. The other thing that got cut off a little bit that I was talking about some of the Sasquatch like sort of things here. This re-evolution theory, and that is also that the why people keep being skeptical of all this when you have all this ancient history constantly telling you about the wilder man, the green man, these all over the place. They're humans, dudes. I mean, it's the end of it. There shouldn't be arguments about this. It's very logical that we have wild feral to ancient humans that are still amongst us in different groups all over the place, hidden in caving and underground tunnel systems. I highly suspect this habit happened ages ago when people would fight with sort of when you would first run across these guys, they didn't have any interaction with you because they were locked in caves after the flood, and some of them decided to still live underground. As far as I know, the most earliest ones, when they're all escaping this flood, brought in piles of sheep and animals as stock to eat or whatever, right? Like this kind of thing, I can see that, or sometimes they got lucky and maybe there's underground sort of systems that actually can be lush from some kind of heat like system or whatever, right? Some of them could be like this and are down there, right? And this sort of thing like that. So, and again, depending on who the people were that ran into those caves at that time, from the Nephilim giants to all these different variants, right? These guys, some of them figured out how to do this. And I mean, it's very logical that not likely that just Noah and his gang survive. I don't think that this God guy, Yahweh, is going to go out of his way, these space alien guys, to go in every cave and zap each one to make sure that they didn't survive. I really doubt this, right? Like, so, in other words, the guy said, we're going to wipe it out. Most of them are going to go, but I don't think that if anybody was smart enough to survive and they said, oh, I'm sorry, Lord, whatever, maybe some they just leave alone, right? So they let them be like this. And just to see what that's going to happen then too, right? That's even a more primitive version of them in more ancient times, right? You have all these ancient historians telling you that quite often these ape-hairy people would be born, or lycanthrope people that are hairy that look exactly like a werewolf, like I showed you in the second show. Obviously, when you get out in the woods and living in caves, the guy said that they would see them all the time thereafter. There's gazillions of records of this stuff with drawings and paintings of them and everything. I don't understand why people keep denying factual things, right? Like, I mean, you can't keep saying all these historic, and each time people are proving you that you know what I mean, that these things are out there. I mean, this is a real film, folks. It's not illegitimate at all. I impossible. So that is a real giant Angola in front of you. They exist. There is lake monsters. No, there isn't just one Loch Ness monster. Please, you know, my mind can't handle it almost anymore. But it's getting each year. I get more silly like stuff on the internet here to the point of romper room stuff here. Like I mean, each time the guy's claiming the same thing. You know, I just saw this a show that you could have sworn that they watched one of my shows, but they tweaked it up. They got this young lady to do the narrating, and they're doing all their sort of stuff, right? Like, I mean, all these things I mentioned on these shows from sometimes years ago, right? Like, but the problem too that we're running across now is that there's so many people that want to do these shows and so many Bigfoot so-called experts and all these kinds of things, right? Like, I mean, they're running out of information to keep covering again, right? Like, I mean, a lot of them keep covering the same sorts of things, right? And sometimes I do because I just want to put it where it's mixed in good with another show, and that if people haven't seen it before, well, whatever, right? I'll talk about it and that sort of thing like that. But the problem, a lot of things is because uh, they just go in a circle, right? And I mean, sort of thing like that, and that sort of way, right? And you know, it's a shame. Like I mean, the guys that made this entertaining where it was much better, like they say, the Four Horsemen, right? And even though I'm not known, they all knew me, and I consider Roger like a horseman, right? Like I mean, I Roger and Bob should be considered fully in this way too, because I mean they did something that the rest of them have never been able to do, right? You know, sort of thing like that. So I was the littlest horseman in the world, right? I knew all these guys, would talk to them, converse with them, but I'm a kid, right? So I was just younger than them, right? But I mean, sort of thing like that. So I know all this stuff, and they were amazed by my sort of knowledge on ancient sort of stories of this, right? Oh, and that was another thing is a lot of people keep claiming that a teacher that in the Chehalis Reserve that came up with this Sasquatch. I don't know if that's actually true. I found several older articles than his time that are by 10, 20, 30 years sort of thing. And two of them called the guy Sasquatch. So the only difference is an N in it. You see what I mean? So I believe that there was other tribes already calling it Sasquatch, a few of them. I just don't remember which tribes that they were, right? But I have these articles somewhere, and that sort of thing like that. And so then when I think it was Mr. Burns, or yeah, I can't think of his name in a second. But anyways, the teacher, right? The guy, he probably either said it slightly wrong, wasn't understanding what they were saying, or whatever, or the papers back then, they were actually saying it the correct way. Maybe then he didn't understand Sasquatch, and maybe it sounded to him like Sasquatch, and he put it this way, right? And then it became this popular thing all over, right? But the actual reality, it seems that some natives out there must have already been calling them this name, and it's not a derivative of several things like I've seen in every book. So I disagree with this because of this reasons, right? So I think all these people are incorrect about that information, right? And that sort of thing like that. But anyways, there's the, these original sort of horsemen like guys, right? I mean, it was fun then, right? Like, I mean, all kinds of new things all the time, and that sort of thing like that. I love writing. Like, I mean, it was just like my dad of Bigfoot, right? Like, sort of thing. It cost me a fortune all the time, and back and forth, and we talked. And like I said, he said to me something really strange on one of the conversations. He says, "There's something you don't know about that film, right?" Like, and that sort of thing. And that always gave me this little blob of something in my head, right? Like that sort of thing, like that. And then I finally figured out he was just trying to, because he knew that they had the original film, but it was like an evolved, and that this new one was made, and somebody had done some little thing to it or something, right? Like cropped off something or whatever it was, right? And that sort of thing like that. And so this made him then a little bit, in some ways, also suspicious in some strange ways. But he didn't have the proper science things and everything to back it up even further, right? But he sure was at most of the time a fighter for the film, right, and that sort of thing like that. But I think also he thought, you know, if you once you get hooked into this young man, you know you're going to be like, it's a lifelong thing. And I think he's just trying to spare me the grief and the ridicule and all that sort of thing, which I listened to all the time. But I ended up just keep fighting these guys, right? Like, I don't care, bring it on. I can back up what I say, a lot of things, right? So the expert guy that's going to tell me Bigfoot doesn't exist, I can battle him whatever thing he wants to claim, right? Like, I mean, because again, Roman, Greek wild men, I mean, from thousands of years ago, all the same stories. Watch out your, don't let them near your cattle, all these things, I mean, and every time you believe that somebody just made this up and conveniently they all have the same attributes and things. I mean, come on, really? And the same with these ancient eels, right? I suspect that these haired ones, right, were either an off branch of them, like this dragpike was, and that sort of thing like that, like another giant form of Esox, right, and that sort of thing like that, and in this case, a more giant form of Angola, where or that because they were landlocked in something, like if they stayed in, you know, sort of thing like a eunuch, like a deal where they don't need to leave the lake because it's so big, or that particular one doesn't have underground caverns and they got in there from some flood and couldn't get back out. Whatever the case, right? It could be that over when they get super old, maybe that somehow these hair like sort of things start to come from old age or something. Who knows, right? But I mean, whatever the case, and maybe their heads mutate a little bit and strange things, right? Sort of thing, right? And so it's very interesting. But I mean, whatever the case, these giant angolas truly exist, truly lake monsters of at least that. To wayward seals, sharks, all kinds of other ones can cause these phenomena, as well as unknown ones like the plague monster of the, sort of the plague monster, or some of the other strange varieties that have been seen all over the place, right? There's other ones out there for sure also exist because, again, there's enough of the same sightings, right? Where they're always matching, right? Like that muck shalash creature. I mean, 100% that's a real, legitimate sea snake monster of some sort, right? Like, I mean, he's 100% very much like a mobile lake monster, right? And maybe that particular kind can do that as well, crawl over the grass and go back to the ocean as far as you know, or whatever that they do, right? So no wonder the scientist guy is never going to see this, as well as because eels have a habit of burrowing in Lake Okopogo, in Lake Okanagan, right? These guys, divers down there, found these giant holes that were super wide, right? That seemed like some creature was burrowing down there, right? None of the, like, carp will burrow down a bit, or catfish or stuff, but not like that. Like, I mean, this seems, and it's all perfectly round and everything, exactly the habit of a small eels would have. A giant eel, I suggest, might have the same ability. And maybe that's why in Loch Ness and different things, because most people are out in the day, when the creature's not active, unless it's storm-like stuff and there's a lot of fish for them around to feed off of, most of the time, maybe they actually do this and burrow down right in the mud sort of thing and just relax there until they want to pee, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, I mean, keep these things in mind. Enough of the silly skepticism of, especially, I can still see you arguing the Bigfoot point. But I mean, really, if you went through all my shows of every parts of the Bigfoot ones, and you analyze that all of them are always pluses to this. There's no minuses here. I mean, you each time the last story was corroborating the ones before, right? Like, I mean, you can't just keep having this randomly, right? And it's fully understandable why wild humans be able to evade us. Like I said, maybe some of them decided to keep this caving like habit. They were scared, thinking this flood's going to come back again. They start, because they're so big, some of the giants that survived, these Nephilim guys or whatever it is, and they started building underground tunnels. These trees are, maybe as far as I know, where they break off all these branches and stuff, a language to tell the Bigfoot monster, yeah, big cave them down 100 yardums, right? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And they're primitive humans, right? Like even though some of them look like a giant Bigfoot, I mean, like a giant gorilla, right? It could be that even they are, like these scientists say, some kind of strange version of us, right? And that sort of thing. And if they're not, if they're a separate family, the same thing is, I mean, the gorilla guy might be able to change to a pygmy gorilla, and these guys, and all these things are locked in there. So it could be that an ancient gorilla, one of the kinds, for sure, many of them are the alba sort, where they're wild humans. I'd say at least about 70% of this stuff is caused by that sort of phenomena, and some just happen to be real big monsters, right? And that, but there could be also this some kind of gorilla that started walking upright, right? That either was brought from Asian stuff in early times, or stuff and got into North America through this land bridge or whatever, right? Like some kind of thing like that. So both of these kinds seemingly exist in different varieties worldwide, from the smallest little midget guys, trolls, gnomes, all this kinds of stuff. They're usually furry most of the time. They're usually in a cave, right? Or down in some tunnels, right? And this kind of thing. So, I mean, it all adds up every time. So you either got to go the Joe Nichols way and say that tens of thousands of people hallucinated the same eel monster, the same Bigfoot monster, and all this from all across in different areas where, of course, humans have always been. We've been spread across the world, right? And that and that every single time that in each document that where the English guy didn't know a cheap big horse, you know what I mean, here in Quebec, let's say, right? Like, I mean, so, and why does Chief Big Horse tell you the same thing as the guy in Canuck Chase or these different places, right? I mean, this is ludicrous stuff, right? And it was all trained by skeptic scientists, the general public monkey-minded people. When they listen to these guys, they just 100% believe every single thing. They're the great genius, and so then they think then that people will be skeptical of them if they would say that they would believe in such a thing, right? So their fear of ridicule and that, and there's just some people that don't believe in anything, no matter what's shown in front of them. They're still just until it's shoved up their rectum, they're not going to take it, right? So the thing is that it's like this, right? And sadly, we have this balance of piles of scientists calling general people, from myself to all kinds of people, that were all hallucinated or liars or whatever, and this kind of thing. You know what I mean? When you have way more people that have claimed to see these things, from the most highest, you know what I mean, government officials to police to ambulance guys, to every kind of walk of life you could humanly think of, with all kinds of high intellect sort of minds, to just a guy from the backwoods, right? And but they are all able to tell you the same thing. Now, of course, the internet, sadly, you could argue that a lot of this stuff, because they can pick up this information and make a believable story, and I agree with that. That could be the case in a lot of ways, right? But when they pass lie detector tests, like Bob and Roger did, and all these kinds of things, right? You can't just keep going like this. I mean, so it's very straightforward. There is a lot of unknown animals to science out there still. There's a lot of bigger fish and sea monsters and all kinds of things than what these scientists believe. for sure, all kinds of these things exist, probably from megalodon still. I mean, I find that the most lunar. Oh, speaking of that, I do have to apologize about something. I finally found the dimensions, according, like at least from three sources, that the cage was 2.5 feet, and another guy claimed 3.5 feet. So even at 2.5 feet, I don't care. No matter what, that giant shark, right, whatever he was, sort of thing, had to be well over 30 some feet, even at that, what it had, right? So these guys saying it's 20 feet, they're delusionary. So that for sure. And what confused me, that's why I thought it was a way bigger shark cage, is right at first you see a group of sharks and they all take off, right? And I mean, normally sharks, even when they're come out like I mean a lot of them are you know what I mean, at least like a 2, 3, 4, like that sort of like a certain length, right? So I mean I just presumed right away because there's a group of them there that this cage obviously was like a bit bigger and what they sort of think. But so anyways, I made a mistake there. Like I said, I'll apologize if I do, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I probably well over exaggerate what possibly this creature could be. But the thing is I still say that there's no way that that thing's under 30 some feet to maybe over 40 feet long, right? Like, and so it's way bigger than accepted, right? So, and there's corroborating stories of that. I find that shark looks a lot like a Greenland sharkish sort of one, that in this sort of range, right? And that sort of thing like that. And another thing I have on one of my on a mermaid show, I there was these spears that was all found by this guy, and when I rechecked the stuff, I had found out that actually they weren't saying that this strange creature was a mermaid, that the mermaids were shooting it, right? And that sort of thing like that. And it was them that was shooting these spears at it, right? And there's this other one that matches with the same kind of spears that I found the full picture of it, and it seems to be a whaler shark of some sort. So it's not a great white, right? That, and I thought the fin was a bit strange anyway, but there's so many kinds of species of shark, and it's an old photo and that sort of thing like that. But it seems to me that's probably what they were. And these mermaids shot these spears through it. George told me these stories. These guys in the Caspian Sea and all these wacky stuff, right? And fighting these spears and nets with fish alive still in them, and the spears through them. I mean, something's causing that, right? So even though I don't want to believe in it, like in a certain way, right? I mean, I gotta wonder again, why is there cave paintings of them even, and all this sort of thing. So as far as I know, this mighty Yahweh made something like that in the oceans, right? And they know to avoid us, simply, right? Or don't care about us because they're in the ocean, right? Whatever the case, right? I mean, I got to wonder about these serines, all these sorts of things. I mean, it could be that there actually is some kind of base to that, and we'll cover that in another sort of a show and that sort of thing like that. But anyways, these kinds of things. So there's for sure, no matter what, at the end of the day, there really is at least a very good explanation for a lot of lake monsters. Some early scientists had proposed this as well. There was glass eels, elver eels, sort of thing that were found that were like had 6 feet, and maybe this is true that that would have came into that. Some other guy tried to dispute it and claim that probably would stay the same, but how would he know that? You'd have to keep him alive for a zillion years, right? Like, in other words, that's just assumption, right? So it could be that that was actual real proof that these things actually exist, right? I have a story about one that was witnessed by a bunch of lock workers on the Rideau Canal of a giant, they called it the condom monster, right? And it was seemingly like an elver, like eel sort of thing, and this thing was at least 9 feet or so on it, right? And sadly, these workers let the thing through. They didn't think of such a thing, right? Because they didn't. They just thought it would look like a big white eel, sort of like strange, clearish, whitish eel, right? So very interesting. Anyways, I'll cover that another time and that sort of thing like that. But clearly, these things exist. Again, that don't ever watch that film. It upsets me so bad I can't look at it anymore. I looked at it a couple of times just to make sure what I was seeing. I froze every micro frame. Clearly, this guy's poor Poochie seemingly was attacked by a giant eel monster of some sort in Lake Michigan. And I mean, it's the most sickening, grossest thing. I'm in tears. I love the little poor Poochie guy, and he's swimming. I mean, it's just too much for me to handle, right? So, I mean, sort of thing like that, right? But I mean, I would love to, like I said, go to the Falcons. I believe with proper equipment, like even 2 to 400 pound line just to make sure that I'm being on the safe side and that because it's not going to break that. I mean, I landed a 14.5 foot nurse shark in a Florida drip boat with 50-pound test line, and they made us cut it off because you couldn't bring this thing, like you can't put that in a ship with piles of people, right? It's going to destroy the thing, and I was in tears, right? Because I wanted to get a picture with him, right? Like sort of thing like that. So, I mean, my coolest thing ever, right? Like sort of thing like that to me. So I just haven't gotten a chance to chase some of these giants, but I certainly know how to do any one of them, right? Like, Jeremy Wade's not the only guy that's caught a lot of big fish around the sort of thing, right? So I mean, I know that I would be able to land that thing. I mean, I've been fishing since I was 2, and that's all I do is play giant fish of lots of species. So, on anything from what they call sewing thread, that's invisible thread, that's a half 1 pound test line. I've landed fish over 30 pounds on this stuff, including muskies. I got a photograph actually from a few years back. I had done when I was first starting these videos and stuff. I decided to do this sewing thread challenge and sort of thing like that. And I had to use a really sort of noodly like rod because I was actually using it with a crankbait, and I put like a 10-pound trace leader. It's still like this pound line sort of stuff, right? But I mean, depending on the company, I seen somewhere it broke like a half a pound and one about a pound and a half, like so it's all in that sort of range, right? But I mean, it's ridiculously light line, right? And that sort of thing like this. And these bikers came by and they helped me get the photograph of it and that sort of thing like that, right? But I landed it and that's why I use this trace because I have to reach down at the bottom and actually grab this last little piece of line and then thread it up to my hand, right? I don't use nets and things like that. So, but anyways, I've done this like 7 times, landed 7 muskies on what they call invisible thread, carp over 30 pounds, world record size sort of suckers, all kinds of different things, right? So I have this challenge in the spring and I just do it for fun because I don't want to fight them like that in the summer months. There's way more weeds, of course, and all kinds of things that the chances of success of getting them in is a lot less here. And I have a rule: if I ever broke off 3 in a season, I'm never gonna do like that's it, right? And I use only the most microscopic little size hooks and all kinds of things. And it's just and if you do it in the spring when the water's nice and cold, the creatures don't fight as hard as later on when it gets warm up a little bit and they're a bit more lethargic still. And if you're very careful and do all the right procedures and like I said, been playing fish for ages like me, that sort of thing, and more of a light line expert, you can achieve these kinds of things. I reeled in over a 25-pound steelhead on that, and all kinds of other ones where there was dozens of people in this stream, and none of them could catch these fish. I was the only one that they kept wanting me to keep them to feed them, right? And that sort of thing like that. By slaughtering these people by using this, right? And I mean, so, but the problem is that when you use crankbaits or other things, you got to be really careful, and you have the most non-pressurous rod because you still got to set the hook into this guy, and it's got to be able to give. And crankbaits weaken the line constantly, so that's why I had this trace leader, and you got to be so careful and check it every couple of minutes and pull on it to make sure that it hasn't starting to weaken already. That's how dangerous it is, right? So not suggested, right? You'll be losing $10, $20 lures down the sort of thing, plus the poor fish he's got in his mouth and that sort of thing like that. But this is the ultra extreme test for me, right? I just enjoy that end because I'm successful at it and not breaking them off. You know what I mean? I can do this and get away with it, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I certainly know I'd be able to reel this dude in. I would be the most thrilled thing on earth, man. I would love to stick this right on the front of every major newspaper in the planet. Yeah, you know what I mean? Giant Angolas are proved. We'll call him Joe Nichols Jr. Sort of thing like that. And just to sort of so that I don't have to listen to this anymore, right? Like, I mean, I listened to this since I was a kid from all these skeptic guys, and every time, right? I mean, a lot of these things end up being real, right? And that sort of thing like that. And I certainly know these guys are. So, anyways, we'll continue on here. Here we have these some lion sightings here. I wanted to cover a little bit more about this, but because of time zones and things, I'll continue on with this and maybe in the next show or something like that. But I'm going to do some of it now, and I just wanted to because there's other cryptid cats, and I wanted to cover some newer things I found about moonquah that I'd never seen before, and a few other sort of ones out there and that. But we'll cover these for now. The jungle lion of Peru. This is an unusual one. It's described as having like red mane and sort of furry like of a lion, mostly sighted in the Yanachaga National Park, and a few reports in the surrounding region. Seems to be the size or smaller of a typical African lion, right? Few sightings around caves or water, right? So not that much I know about it, just the basics sort of thing that it's definitely like a lion. It seems to be like with the manish stuff and everything like that, but he's got like red colored. So this is like could be one of these more ancient sort of lions, right, or whatever that are still surviving, and that sort of thing like that. So very interesting. And Peru, El Salvador, and that both of these sort of like in El Salvador, mostly females were reports seemingly lionesses around villages and hearing crying to roars at night, seemingly seen often for decades and then was thought killed off by locals. Modern sightings unknown. I've not seen anything for quite some time, so it could be. I mean, I can't follow everything out there. There's just too much stuff, right? So there could be. I'm sure some 14-year-old's going to contact us. Oh, there was a, but I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, how even such a big creatures like this can, you know what I mean, evade, right? Like, it's fascinating, right? But it's just simply. I suspect like a certain lions, animals, cats are cryptid. They're more coming out at night. Normally, most people aren't hanging around in caves, and if they heard a roar, they're going to hit the road, right? You know, like, and actually, I have a few reports like that, sort of thing like that. So, and there's these different ones, right? Like, besides the circus like phenomena, there seems to be different lines that are not known whatsoever, or like by science yet, of any sort, right? In 1878, trappers see two white lions with the blue eyes, one no mane, come out of a cave and roar at them in northern Quebec. Panthera leoatrix, although thought extinct, some sightings are similar in some of the ones that we have. And that in West Virginia, a Maine black lion killed farmers' sheep for several years, then vanished, sort of thing. And that might have been one of these sort of ones, right? Because that's what it was suspected that this Panthera leoatrix was actually darker, right? And that sort of thing like that. In Alaska, 1877, a man's wife was grabbed by a huge gray-haired lion with bright blue eyes and ran into a glacier cave, then vanished. So there's something like this guy here, right? Oh, I know, poor guy. But I mean, this poor lady here and everything. But I mean, you love them so much, too, right? Like, I understand the guy. He's not thinking like a human, like, you know what I mean? He's just an animal that needs to eat, right? Like, I mean, so he's not seeing it the same way maybe we would, right? Like, and that sort of thing like that. However, they're really intelligent. But I mean, when it comes to that sort of thing, I mean, you have to eat, right? And that, and you know, whether he ever saw a human before or not, he's just seeing a something that would look eatable, right? And that sort of thing like that. So awful shame, right? Like, but these things have happened. I mean, and that sort of thing like that, because they're such beautiful creatures. There was these like in ancient Greek there, the Nemean lion and all these sorts of ones, right? Like, I mean, there's so many of these kinds of ones over the ages, right? That cave lions in the most smallest little countries that still survived until not massive ages ago. Some was like around the late 1800s, early 1900s, a little bit later for some of them, and they're still we're living in there, right? And these are small areas, and yet almost no people would ever see these things, right? And so they were all over the world. So I mean, it's very simple that maybe in the earliest times that some of these guys became different by moving to different areas. I mean, in Alaska, let's say the strange one down there, or these different ones, they're because lions have been worldwide spread and that sort of thing like that. It's interesting that there's these different, even from Quebec, but you don't see these now. I mean, there was some stories like this in the 60s and 70s, and I presume they were from escaped circuses and this kind of thing. But pretty well, it's like it's not been around for a long time, this sort of sightings, but some places in the States, in this Northwest Territories, Alaska, once in a blue moon, there's still these kinds of things, right? So it could be that, I mean, it's such gigantic territory and all these kinds of things like that, you know, sort of thing, right? So, I mean, it's extremely interesting that how this could be, right? But I mean, at the same time, we do have in some air regions like titanic amounts of unknown forests and that. And if some earlier escapee pets and things got in little groups, there was enough of them. Like usually, if the lions are chained up together, right? And that sort of thing like that. So one escapes, maybe four or five dead, and there's enough there to now they're out in the wilderness. They're relaxed. Finally, Big Leo gets some romantic notions, right? And all of a sudden, now you got a pride here, right? And that sort of thing like that. So then, and maybe because they were kidnapped, these early ones, right? Like they were held all the time in hot cages and everything like that. So I would suspect that they would really want to escape people, even more so, like really stay away from you, not wanting to get in that thing again. So then it could be that there's these sightings around. They're always so random and they're only seen per minute and then never again, right? Usually in the same area or maybe for a month or two sightings or a week or something, then they're gone, right? Because I would imagine also a big creature like this needs to keep, yeah, you know what I mean, having enough food supply, right? And that, and because they're so one of eight humans, it could be that you know they've learned to become even more cryptic and sort of things like that, right? So it's an interesting thing. Here's some more here. Yosemite National Park ranger sees strange lion-looking cats, one large with a mane, yellow colored drinking water along Yellowstone Lake, 1940s. Thunder Bay, Ontario, late 1800s. Trapper finds cave and hears roars and fleed it. And this guy, he seemed to, like, it didn't seem to be like a cougar or something. It seemed like this thing was like a lion, or, you know, like the worst sort of things, right? So even though it wasn't fully seen or anything, you know, it seemed like that's maybe it could be possible that there was a few of these relic sort of cavish sort of lions from old times here that may have still been floating around at the turn of our sort of century and stuff like that. But I mean, they still exist here. Like in 2009, Yosemite hikers sees line matching description of Panthera leoatrix. Quebec 1905, horseman sees black color female lion cross road. Alaska late 1800s, blue-eyed Maine lion grabs girl and runs off into a glacier field. Idaho lions and ligers reported decades likely escaped circus animals. Also, Mount Pillier region said to be still roaming area. Many other stories out there in multi-states yearly odd deaths of cattle with seemingly claw marks in them and roars heard, right? So, I mean, it's very interesting. And I mean, a lot of these cryptids end up real. Like, as for instance, this guy here, right? These wildcat they didn't believe in these, right, in Scotland and things like that. They knew of the Scottish wildcat, but this one here was this one reported all the time, right? And finally, some guy shot one and everything like this, and they thought they were a new species, but it ended up they were a mixture of wild the European wildcat, which is a real wildcat, right? And that sort of thing, and some domestic guys that somehow got in there and they ran into each other and mated, right? And they became this sort of thing. So they look pretty feisty, eh? Sort of thing like that. But again, all these people for ages they kept saying it was a myth, right? And then finally one guy got lucky, right? This is the whole thing, right? People don't seem to understand this, that no matter it's really true, a lot of these, right? And that's what fascinates me about the general public, that finally, I've tried to say this about 3, 4 times, and before it slips out of my mind, there's this guy that has this show that supposedly is some expert on UFOs or something from Britain, and then they this guy says, I've investigated the Sasquatch phenomena thoroughly, and I've not yet to see anything of that. And he says, "Well, yes, I fully agree." There's well, hey, the guy lives in England. There's just in Connaught Chase alone all kinds of things, including a skeleton skull that was found there, ancient manuscripts from 11th, 12th century, all these ones, including a murder by one, and then a murder in the 60s with even a film of it screaming and everything. How could people be like this? I don't see how you can keep ignoring these. I mean, these girls were killed. I mean, some killed them, right? Do you really believe a fox killed them, as the police said? Come on. I mean, really? Like, I mean, they found one of the girls with her eaten, like, and shit like that from 17th century. Miners, all kinds of people, even photographs of it. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't understand how any person could say that there's no validity to the Sasquatch phenomena. You have thousands of years of every culture of the planet telling you there's cavemen, and some are quite big, and some are little dudes. Some are not as furry, like, you know what I mean? And these variants, right? Depending on where they live and cave-like environments, what kind of genetics that they took, right? But I mean, these I don't really understand this. I can't understand how somebody could deny ancient manuscripts where I've showed you some of my other shows. It's got whole books even describing the wild man, what their sizes are, what they like to feed off of and everything. And you really believe this is all imagination? I mean, we I don't get it, right? So anyways, I never will, you know what I mean? Like, because I know when I was at Kickapoo Creek, I saw some kind of baby Bigfootish like thing, or a wild ape that escaped somewhere from a zoo, right? Or that sort of thing. But it was something like that. And I know I heard screams from hell from this Queon Bigfoot monster guy, right? That totally was insane and really big, according to the fellow that this Bigfoot guy got a bit peeved off at him for possibly peeing on him. So, could you imagine? I'm glad that, like, in a lot of ways, I'm envious of him, that then I'd fully, like, I mean, he's right in front of my face. I'm going to always know this without even a smidgen of a doubt in my mind, right? But which I don't anyways. I mean, because I saw this smaller, and also when I was in BC near Kelowna, I saw some strange thing that looked much more to be like a human leaning down drinking water than it would have been a bear, right? All of us the same thing. We thought it was odd looking, right? But because we only had 3 seconds seeing this thing in between two sets of trees, it was gone, right? So I mean, So, but whatever it was huge, and I mean, it had a giant rump on it, and whatever, right? And standing on 2 legs and leaned down and seemed with one hand to be drinking water, and the other hand was kind of just like that, right? So I don't believe it was a bear. Right, but I mean, I can't say for sure. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean. I'm not 100%. I'm not gonna say something just because I believe that probably was. I mean, it's just good enough for me that more likely that's what it was than not. So maybe I have seen a Sasquatch already, maybe two of them, if that baby one was one, right? Or that sort of thing like that. But I find these things ridiculous when a cryptozoological guy has no problem believing in flying saucers and Martians coming down, which I know exist anyways, right? But the thing is that to me that's even more for the average citizen to believe that a Martian's going to come down and say hello to them than it would be for me that a mysterious cat could exist or wild humans that are furry. I mean, I don't see it being as mysterious as others do. And I mean, I think there's by far enough anecdotal and also physical tests of 10 zillion times where they say, oh, it's a human but with strange anomalies, or it was like a human, or this kinds of things, and that you must have tainted it. No, none of these people probably ever tainted any of these samples. They simply because they're a wild human. That's what they are, right? So they may be very close. And like I said, if some aren't that old, like a family Brown has four big giant hairy dudes and a daughter, and the posse, the local town throws rocks at them. So eventually the parent gave them enough basic information, gave them some picnic baskets, and said, "Sorry, kids, you guys, you're gonna have to hit the road because the townsfolk are gonna kill you," and this sort of thing. And this could have even happened 100 years ago because people still were a lot more primitive on average in the sense of they're not seeing the internet or any, so they're not going to only have information only that can be handed to them, right? Like where they have to see it themselves or somebody tells them about it, right? So I mean these things and the consistency of even some being caught that were held in a circus, even and all kinds of stuff. I find this totally illogical that people keep denying that they exist when there's records of them being caught, numerous ones, from Maria LeBlanc to all kinds of them out there, Peter and all kinds of them that for sure were caught. They were owned by royalty and these kinds of things like that. And one even got married off and that sort of thing like that, right? But there's other ones from Portugal and all other countries where the king let the hairy guy even have his own find a maid and have children. And a lot of them would have this. And this is what I'm saying. The same thing could occur out there. But to deny that these things exist, I find massive foolishness. I really do. So I don't get how anybody can debate any of this and how some guy could say, I don't see anything about the Sasquatch phenomena when you have records for thousands of years of every culture telling you these wild men exist, that they grab their daughters or sons sometimes and things and grab them and run off to them in a cave. And you have all these ancient sort of things and even footprints in the ground that are fossilized that match a Bigfoot and that and sort of thing. I don't get it at the end of the day how people keep denying these sort of things, right? But anyways, it's interesting. But there's a lot more wild cats out there than that. But I wanted to get into this mysterious items and things like that, and we'll cover this on another time. A bunch of other ones from around the world and things like that, and this United States phenomena and Canada that even still to this date, occasionally strange deaths that are occurring that could be of a large cat-like creature of some sort, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, anyways, we'll continue on here with that. Subject that quite fascinates me. I love all this stuff. Is magic items from King Solomon's ring to the mighty Joan of Arc, or with her mighty fire sword, magic mirrors to staffs, and is there really such things? Now, this will be a bit shorter one because I'm going to continue this on. I have so many items and different things like that, but I wanted to mention about these particular ones right at this moment because they fascinate me so much. I mean, totally insane. Uh, Uh, so we'll first go on about King Solomon and that sort of thing like that, and also I'll do some more of the cat stuff another time. But because this one was so long, this one's going to be a bit shorter all around, sort of a thing, right? And that sort of thing like that. But we'll start off with the King Solomon's ring. An archangel is told by God to give a magic ring that's inscribed with the name of Yahweh, right? Okay, that's his name, Yahweh. Okay, now here's some strange things about this. In early text and things and different pictures and stuff, I've seen this 7 star one of Solomon. Okay, but in the Jewish, it's 6, and some it's 5, and this kind of thing. So it's interesting. How did that occur? Like why lesser points all of a sudden, right? And that sort of thing like that. But whatever the case, right? He would could call an angel or a demon, right? Me personally, I would have first called the angel and said, Angel, can you make sure when I call the demon that they can't trick me or do anything to me, right? That's the way my head works, right? Like, so right away, I would have went for the more safety one, right? Like out of the two of them, right? Because now you're dealing with this sort of gang. This guy, like in the thing, they say that this demon tricked King Solomon and he lost all of his stuff and everything and that sort of thing like that. He tricked him and grabbed his ring and threw it into the ocean. But a fish then grabbed it and he caught it and he actually then was able to put back on the ring. So I mean, obviously, from if this story's true, which like I said, these biblical things always seem to be right, and that sort of thing like that. Well, then this actually God must have, yeah, you know what I mean? This Yahweh must have, or an angel or whatever, right? Some kind of mystical forces there was going on, and got him to go out in the right spot at the right time and all that sort of thing to get this back because he was meant to sort of run it, right? And that. Now, nobody knows really. There's arguments. Some say that they when other people tried to raid King Solomon's tombs and that apparently this ring may still be there. Others claim it's in the Vatican. I mean, there's a lot of trails around, right? But the sort of thing like that. And if it's true that it was in the Vatican and things like that, some of these people theorize that, you know, at the last days of this Titanic battle, that some character's going to put this on, like a pope or whatever, right? Like this kind of thing, and use it to fight against things and that sort of stuff. Right. So I mean, very bizarre, interesting. But what I find massively interesting about this ring is that it's mentioned in the Bible, it's mentioned in the Quran, it's mentioned in many other sort of side like gangs that are out there where they all believe that this ring fully existed, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, again, this is my thing about why humans get, we imagine a spirit guy that just needs to float there and he can go poofo and do whatever, right? And that may all be reality to a certain degree or whatever, right? But I kind of way more suspect here that, like I said, that this is a he is like a god because he created it, right? So he's a, yeah, you know, that's what it really, you're thanking your creator, right? Like sort of idea, right? And that sort of thing like that. But the thing is that I suspect that he actually likes designing and making things, or getting his workers, angels, and other things that are do this sort of thing. And he likes making spaceships and rings and things, right? And he implanted this in us to be able to start making similar like things and that sort of thing like that. I mean, but the human mind wants to say, well, why would he need a magic ring? Well, he doesn't need to. He just likes doing these things, it seems. Like because he can make them, and obviously if he inscribes his name in there, and all of a sudden you can call out an angel or a demon monster, right? Like, I mean, there's got to be his power still is all doing this, but he just it's a convenient way for a human to call him, in other words, right? Like, you see what I mean? And the same with the spaceships, the same kinds of things here. They're to make his life easier, right? Like, and that sort of thing, like that, right? And but people believe by wearing this, talisman and ring and the because this is God's favorite number, seven, right? So I choose to believe that the seven um, seal here was probably the right one at first, and I don't know why these things change for certain groups, right? Because the oldest ones I can find is this kind like that, but also you find these 6 and 5 star, right? And that sort of thing like that. But whatever the case, I mean, maybe whatever, right? Like I don't know these things. It's too hard to guess, right? But the thing is that all you had to do was apparently say his mighty name Yahweh and say, I'd like to call the angel, or I'd like to call this demon monster to get me a Rotten Ronnie's meal, or whatever, right? That kind of thing like that. And so, could you imagine how great that this King Solomon was, and is after who were the ones that he passed it on to after, right? That would be able to wield a item like this that you could make mass destruction and take over the world in seconds, probably, right? Like, I mean, you call up the demon monsters and you say, listen, I want you to destroy this city, that. After that, you can't fight a supernatural like sort of thing here, whatever they are, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I mean, I find it amazing that the odd mortals were out there that were this cool, right? Like, I mean, the same with me. I would have immediately raised the angel. I would have found out and told the angel to always protect me, to make sure that the demon monster can't trick me, and that sort of thing like that. And I would use it for proper reasons, right? Like good things, not just to whatever, right? Like that sort of thing like that. I might get greedy a little bit. That wouldn't harm anybody. I'd say, yeah, could you give me the most greatest supernatural fish powers in the universe that no matter what, wherever I throw it, I'm always going to catch the biggest moose. For your own greediness, right? Like, that sort of thing like that. But I mean, all kidding aside, though, like, I mean, I wouldn't want to use then something like that in a con, because then, yeah, unless the people you're fishing against were all evil minions that deserve a butt swat, sort of thing, right? Well, then maybe, he might let me with this little indulgence once it's not killing anybody, right? Sort of thing like that. But I mean, so at least mine wouldn't be that bad compared to a 99.99999 out there that would weaken. Every person I've ever met, they hate their neighbor, or they're mad at this guy, or you know what I mean. I obviously, any person that people that contribute to my show, or myself, isn't the world's greatest worshiper of El Trudeau or any of these politicians, right? So, and that sort of thing like that. And I mean, it'd be very tempting to have on the ring and say, yeah, you know what I mean? Okay, demon monster, get out a big paddle and start chasing Trudeau all around the Canadian market, right? Like, give him a swat every sort of thing, right? To pay back of some of the grief, right? And that's that. But I mean, I wouldn't the same thing kill him or put somebody through too much of a thing, right? You sort of mean like so. I mean, even though I would weaken with it a little bit in certain ways, right? And that sort of thing like that, where I'd feel that, yeah, these people got to be stopped here, right? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and that's why he did give you the ring to use it for proper reasons. And I mean, if some gang of muggers is shooting up grannies and getting them on crack, and mugging and prostituting them and everything like this, well, that kind of thing, I mean, I'm sure God would forgive me to pull out the demon monster and, you know what I mean, get them out of town, right? You see what I mean? Like so. I mean, but a vast majority of people would do it completely all for their own sort of thing, and that's why I respect and admire this mighty King Solomon. I got this the seal of Solomon on me, or sometimes they call it God's seal. Different, like this. What I'm saying, they're all intertwiningly, seemingly, and I have no idea really whether the ring really actually had seven stars at birth, but I would presume because it's God number, everything is seven in multi times. So I believe that something early weird thing happened where that really is the King Solomon, sort of the seals of Solomon, the seven stars points, and that somehow it got, tweaked around, right, over the centuries or something like that. But anyways, this item is revered by all these different cultures, right? And I mean, they all take this as like literal fact that he could just put this thing on and raise this, angel or demon monster, right? They always, in almost every one of them, always say just a demon, but it's not true. It could raise an angel or a demon, right? And that's what, like, I would have done to right away say, angel, could you please always hang around and protect, make sure I'm not harmed here, or that this devil monster can't, you know what I mean, trick you and that, or harm you, right? Because I mean, you're calling up. That's what their whole purpose is, right? Like this is why I find sometimes some people groups like, I mean, I can understand, I mean, this Satan guy or any of them, I mean, you're looking at this mighty supernatural being, like, let's say some people really have seen these guys, right, or this sort of thing like that, right? Well, I mean, I could fully understand that you would find them mesmerizing and all that sort of stuff, and of course scared of them, right? So you might sort of do worship or whatever they tell you, right? But the thing is because people are fearful, right, and that sort of thing like that. But I mean, you always know when you go that side that even if you get entertainment out of, you know what I mean, chasing your neighbor down the street with giant bat monsters or whatever, attacking them, and that by calling the demon monster, right? I mean, it's all going to come back eventually to you, right? And I mean, so it's like the devil monster guy isn't going to give you a happy ending no matter what, right? So this is the thing is that you have to look at it in this context too. That even though it might be fun to you to terrorize them or whatever, right? But I mean, he is going to probably punish you later, right? Like you see what I mean? Like so. And not God, even just the devil himself, right? I mean, this guy's not here to make your day better. You know what I mean? Like so, and I even understand kind of oddly him. I mean, if this is true that this guy's this great mighty being, right? And then all of a sudden, you're the closest. You're hanging out with him, and that jealousy, I guess, like he said, we made them in our own image, right? And all this, I would suspect that these emotions may be in all of them, right? And that sort of thing like that. And this guy just couldn't stand the fact. And I mean, people are like this. We get this thing and it's something that makes us so angry. It's hard to, like, actually prevent yourself from doing something, you know what I mean, bad to combat them, right? Because you hate it so much. It's just built in it, and that, and this Lucifer guy did not like that. All of a sudden now he's got to pray to us pinions, right, peons, right, and that sort of thing like that. And I can just kind of see why a guy, you know what I mean. It's like. The great hunter. Let's say that people can live 1,000 years, right? And that so this guy is the great hunter for 500 years. He done all this stuff for everybody. He hung out with his creator and that, and then all of a sudden they decide to make some new sort of character, and this guy knows nothing, and now all of a sudden the great hunter has to listen to him when he has like hundreds of years experience. You see what I mean? Like I could see why this might have occurred, right? And I mean, but I think where he went wrong is that the Yahweh wanted, just because they are helpers of him, he just wanted them to also help these humans, right? And that sort of thing like that, right? And it's just that he took it in a different sort of a way. We're not really reading it that massively more in depth than he should have, probably, right? That he saw it as like a just a direct almost like attack on him, that why Lord, I've been a servant to you all this time, I do all this stuff, and now you're telling me I got to worship some character that doesn't even know what time of day it is, right? I could see that, right? Like, but the God was looking at it probably like in a sort of a, I need helpers to help these humans. I want you to listen to them and that. And this kind of got him going, right? It's just a sort of thing like that. So all this all over just an argument. I mean, it seems a bit out there, right? So I don't understand also even my mighty creator and these other magical beings, right? I don't get why, like, I mean, you're this advanced and all that sort of thing. Why is it that this had to occur in the first place? It seems such a shame, right? But again, maybe this was part of the experiment. Like maybe the guy already knew that this was going to occur, right? Like it's a sort of thing or something. I don't know. Like there's got to be some logical reasons for some of these things, but they confuse me. I mean, in a lot of ways, right? Like I mean, and they're telling you that he has to obey the mighty one, but at the same time, then they have a big battle in the sky. So I mean, again, maybe this Lucifer guy really wasn't an angel in the way we see him, like the other ones, right? Like maybe there's these some other thing here, like a great presence, right? That is like an angel maybe and still below this Yahweh, but something different here, like some kind of, I don't know, like different ones say like jinns and all these mystical sort of evil like kind of guys, right? Or the Moloch character, right? Or all these kinds of ones, right? Like so, yeah, I just find it that it's very interesting that why so many cultures and all these people would believe this so much, right? Like, so I do. I really believe that it would be fully feasible that some mighty race could have, like we have now. We got cell phones, and little watches, and everything, and you can GPS this and do that. So you can't tell me that that wouldn't be feasible, right? At all. Like, I mean, it would be. And so the he says Yahweh or rubs it or whatever he had to do. The it sends a signal out there somewhere, and then the signal's picked up, and the mighty Yahweh has given them instructions to answer always the signal and do what the mortal asks them to do, right? And you see what I mean? Like so, it would be very not unbelievable at all in a lot of ways, right? But I mean, whoever owns this, maybe this is how these kingdoms will keep being like we're being run from behind like puppets. It's very possible that maybe somebody still owns this ring and wields this, because I have a hard time believing. I mean, okay, he passes it on to whoever, right? So why would anybody in their right mind then just bury it in King Solomon's tomb when this ring is ultimate power here, right? Like I mean, the next of kin and things like that, they would have, nobody in their right mind should have ever taken this ring off, right? And also have multi guards that and you call up the angel and say, listen, angel, please always guard me here 24/7. Make sure nobody can get this ring off me, right? Like that's what I would be more wanting the angel for, not to cause havoc on anybody or things like that, right? If you're gonna do have to do that, you're better off calling the mean guy, right? And that sort of thing like that. But whatever the case, I just find it very very interesting that this Yahweh guy, and multi times here we're going to be talking about this, has given people mystical items and gave them a quest, right? And this sort of thing like that. But I just wonder, is this ring still being yielded by somebody? And maybe that's how they're able to affect the world so powerful, right? And that sort of thing like that. I mean, you're getting free labor. You raise the demon monster. You tell them to help you, whatever, do this, that, and that. Like, I mean, so I could see that, it would be. This ring would be wanted by all, right? And so who could you trust and things like that. So the earliest wielders of this they must have, would have thought of these kinds of things, I would guess, right? Like, I mean, I certainly would, right? Because, I mean, that's the first thing is I know that if I call a demon monster, as far as I know, he could zap something back on me or whatever, or other people, and I wouldn't want that, right? So, I mean, I would first rather deal with the angel, find out what the demon monster can and cannot do, and that sort of thing like that, and make sure that he can't trick anybody or cause others, great harm or all that sort of stuff. Just using what his purpose was is to help build and things, right? But like I said, a vast majority of people are not that strong, right? And they wouldn't be able to do this, right? It's just because I have no greed and I don't care about power, right? I mean, it'd be all right to rule some little kingdom out in the middle of the thing, right? Because I would rule it wisely, and I wouldn't be making everybody work like a slave 24 hours or any of this stuff, right? Like, so I mean, you could do worse for king, sort of thing like that, and protect their rights and not allow greedy crooks to make everybody half starved in my kingdom or any of that kind of stuff, right? I'm just doing it in a different sort of more logical sorts of fashions, right? Where everybody can have a bit of a pie, right? Sort of thing like that, right? But I mean, I don't, like I said, mind that if my advisors work really hard and they're always advising me doing more work, doing this and that, well, these guys deserve a better sort of thing because they're putting the effort to it to improve our kingdom, right? Like you sort of mean, like that sort of thing like that. But I find this item is revered all over the place. People, magic talismans, and all that. And it's God's favorite number, and that. So I mean, just out of any of the pointed ones, because I don't like six is more like a devil like one, right? And that sort of thing like that. I just and the oldest ones I can find is kind of like this, right? So I just believe more likely that this was the original sort of one, the sign of God, right? Like the seven sort of things, right? But whatever the case, it's an absolutely fascinating item. I know it's hard for people to believe, but at the same time, because we can do these kinds of things now, somebody be able to say, yeah, man, I want a large, extra large pizza and talk to their phone, right? And then all of a sudden the phone is going to come. I mean, the pizza's going to come and get delivered. You see what I mean? Like, so what's the difference where if angels are real and demons and these kinds of things, well, it's no difference. The thing sends a signal and it calls them, right? You see what I mean? Like, we already have this kind of technology here, right? Like, so, I mean, it wouldn't be any different, right? It's just sort of thing. And because he created all these things, he's the inventor of it, or however his advisors helping him, or whatever the case, right? These different ideas, right? So, but anyways, a real fascinating one here. Next, my friggin', I love this chick so much, man. I would have done anything in this universe to meet her. I would love to be her husband. I couldn't care less. Like, I mean, I don't even care what she looked like, right? I'm not. I've seen early drawings that she seemed to be a reasonable enough looking girl and that sort of thing like that. But I just find her the most astonishing human being I've ever never heard of. And all the sorts of ones. Okay, so God starts talking to this young peasant girl. She's a peasant girl. You think giant armies are going to listen to some peasant girl that you know what I mean? In those days they would have put her over their knee, her bottom be red, and get back to the kitchen and start cooking, right? Like that's what they would have done, right? You see what I mean? But how is it that this woman with such great charisma and power, she must have been actually imbued with blessed with God somehow, right? And this sort of thing. So he kept giving her these visions to clear out the gang out of Europe, right, and that sort of thing like that. So uh, she she gets this vision, and he tells her to look for this castle, and behind this throne, she's going to find this mighty sword. Okay, so she does this, right? All of a sudden, she starts amassing. Like, all these people start following her everywhere, and more and more and more. And then her knights destroying enemies all across, like one after another after another. And what's astonishing is that they say that when she'd come riding in, she had this, her sword would glow a fire. And they said that when she'd chop them, they would cauterize, like they weren't bleeding. They just, it had to be some kind of like a Darth Vader laser like contraption, possibly, or something like this, right? And they said it would glow of these wild flames that were coming out of it. And you have this in their records, not in hers as well, but in their records. You see what I mean? Like why would enemies, when they're running to the general, be putting in that some little tiny woman, you know what I mean, wielding a big monster sword, right? That why would they put these things in there? Like, I mean, it's not logical as well. They said that sometimes they'd see these silver discs that all of a sudden would appear, and they'd shoot these beams of fire, like sort of stuff at them and destroy them, right? And I mean, this is in piles of records here. So what? Like what's going on here? Like, so God really wanted to clear out, I guess, this Muslim thing and the different things that was going on, right, in these regions, and then I think though she did something wrong. See, the Lord does this multi times when you have with Samson and all these kinds of different ones, right? Okay, where he allows the person because he knows that this mighty Joan of Arc had the full courage and ability and the things that was needed to get the job done what he wanted, whatever exactly whole thing that he wanted, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I find this astonishing that you have all these records. Also, conveniently again the chariots in the sky shooting beams at them and all this sort of stuff. It completely again sounds like that this Yahweh guy got purposely involved with this because this mighty Joan of Arc had the ability to get the job done. But I suspect that she started doing some naughty stuff that probably the big guy in the sky didn't like, and so he decided to give her the proverbial spanking at the end by allowing this gang to, lynch her, right? But I believe though that still she got punished, but I still think that she ended up will go to heaven because this I find it very hard to believe that this guy's gonna purposely get this person that fully knows that God exists because they're talking to them. And even though they've done a naughty thing, right? As long as they've repented, and I imagine when she was being lynched here, that she was probably saying, please, Lord, yeah, save me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, or whatever, right? So I'm pretty sure she's up there, right? Sort of thing, or waiting to be raised, or however it works, right? And that sort of thing like that. And I would love to see this chick. I want to meet her so bad, but I mean, because I want to see how could it be that a little female mousy thing from a little peasant background could go to such greatness. I mean, I love this stuff. I love hood people that become the greatest thing going. It's my thrill of all thrills, right? Like I mean, the Eminems, the Dr. Dre's even more because Dr. Dre's way before sort of Mr. Eminem and that. I mean, and these early sort of pioneers of all kinds of things. Doesn't matter if it's music or whatever it is, right? Like I mean, and you could even argue these things. I mean. The delivery of rap is exactly even like a lot of similar older cowboy ones. Like if you listen to, I don't know, like Convoy, you know, like the way the guy does it, right? It's very almost like rapish, right? But it was like country, right? So these origins of rock and all kinds of things have such a long back history, probably, that where little influences all helped each other, right? But rap is totally its own sort of thing, and certainly the main aspect of it was created by the guys in the hoods, right? In the early times, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I mean, everybody had to listen to music somewhere and got influences and things from other things, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I mean, and there's magical items that play music and stuff like that, even that we'll talk about in another show here. But I mean, I just find it extraordinary that this woman from nowhere has the ability to apply herself, and that God saw such favor in her. So even though he gave her a tuning after, I believe that then when she said, "Sorry, Lord," so whatever she did wrong that he didn't like, she probably broke some of the things he told her to do, right? And that sort of thing like that. I highly suspect this because I mean I don't. It's not likely he's going to use a demon guy that doesn't want to help God or listen to it. Like so, in other words, she's just like every other human, where we have little bits of weaknesses, and it's tempting some of these things, right? So fully understandable, right? But anyway, she's my bloody hero. Any little chick that could come from some peasant background like that and defeat all these characters, right? And talked to by God Himself, sort of thing. This Yahweh, I find this astonishing. So, and I know it's got to be true because where would she find a sword like that? So even if she imagined God's talking to her, how did she get a sword that can light up in flames and cut people in half and they don't bleed? I mean, really, like, so what happened to this sword? Who took it? Where did it go, right? Does somebody actually own this crazy thing, right? Or maybe then he removed the powers from it, like made it dead. I wanted to put that in here and I couldn't find the bloody photograph. But there's been these ancient staff heads that have been found, some with two, three, four prongs on them. And they got this weird crystal like sort of stuff going on there, quartz crystal like thing. And even scientists theorize that it's feasible that this is actually true, that these staffs that they were using, because they find these usually around some godlike temple or something, right? So it could be that these aliens or the god guy, angel, whatever it is, right? Anunnaki stuff here, they would wield these, and they actually had a power charge in them. Maybe you charged it somehow inside of a pyramid, as far as I know, or whatever, right? Some kind of methodology, and these things could shoot like lightning, like Thor's hammer. We'll be talking about that in a second, and sort of, or fire flames, or these kinds of weird things. So it's feasible that possibly the crystal has some kind of bizarre thing that could contain some kind of powerful energy and could be released by doing something, right? So, I mean, absolutely fascinating, right? So, maybe a similar like thing, and maybe her sword was designed to die out eventually, or some character took it and they passed on, and it's hidden in some depth vault somewhere, right? Or some kind of thing like that. But, anyways, one of the coolest chicks ever in the universe. Like I mean, Joan of Arc, right on. I would have loved to see this woman. I mean, I would have just be thrilled to death. Whatever she wants, it's all good. I just super. I find that so extraordinary that a peasant person could reach to such greatness. So even though she made a mistake, I hope the big guy in the sky gave her, her rightful dues and have her up there, right? Because, like I said, nobody's perfect, right? Sort of thing like that. But here's some other ones here that I wanted to talk about. In 591, Bishop of Limoges was said to have owned a relic that was said to protect him from storms, and it also was said to open the eyes of people who had been just hanged. So pretty creepy, right? Sort of thing like that. Interesting. Can you imagine? Eh? Like, yeah, the guy walks by, and all of a sudden you see all these people's eyeballs open. Like, I mean, that would have tripped me out. That I would not want to watch in a time machine. So stay away from that. When anything creepy like that, that's a bit too much out there, right? As well as Hildegard of Bingen's had relics that were said to be emitting lights at night that would actually light up the whole thing, and then a rainbow during the day. There was this guy, John Dee, he was this early mystic sort of magic guy, and a seer like sort of a person, and he owned this mirror that he could talk to angels with it, and he would actually have conversations with them and things like this. I don't know if this mirror still exists or whatever, but I think it was actually housed at one point in some collection or something like that. So the mirror is real, but they don't know how, like, how he done it. He had to make these incantations, I guess, or something, right? That sort of thing to get it to work. And that an early queen monarch owned a magic mirror that could do similar. It was said that people from other kingdoms would come, and she'd get them to sit down, and it was like this big, weird sort of magic mirror, and the thing would show them their future or answer sorts of questions and things that you know what I mean, that they wanted to know, right? Just like the oracles of Delphi and that sort of thing like that. And I mean, there was these crazy machines. I just wanted to mention, like a lot of times these people are skeptical of these things, right? But I mean, this Archimedes was a genius. I fully believe that this Archimedes magic like mirror here that could burn down you know what I mean? Ships actually really existed. Some guy tried a similar like thing, and he actually was successful after a certain amount of time to get a boat to set on fire. So it proves that because his design isn't the same as exactly as Archimedes was, it was only guesses and different materials, some of the things he had to use, but it worked though still. So all you had to do is keep working on this, and eventually you'd be able to figure out how to intensify it way better, right? So I mean, and the same thing. These all these guys usually were told this in dreams or all kinds of stuff. Almost every famous kind of guy you can think out there, you know, of different characters. Many of them always say this, that they were given a vision or some alien guy talked to them or an angel and this sort of thing like that, right? So I mean, absolutely bizarre. Like where it seems again that the Yahweh guy does get involved, or other aliens and things like that, that get involved and help man occasionally do different sorts of things here for some purpose that they want, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, I mean, really interesting things here. One of the ones that really fascinates me is this one here, the Roswell Rock, the extraterrestrial stone. This guy, Robert Ridge, had found this rock near the Roswell crash. It was a little bit out of the area where they had actually did the army had swept across 5 zillion times looking for this, and it was just on the edge of it. So of course, one stone could fly another 10 feet more. So it was at the edges of it, sort of thing like this, right? This stone is real. It's actually not fake of anything. I saw Giorgio actually at a show I'd watched recently, and he had Robert on there, a real nice fellow. And this guy was in tears. He finally agreed to let them do a micro little core sample on the bottom of it, so it doesn't wreck anything, and just the tiniest little scrape like thing, and it proved that it's real. And right in the bizarre center of this, there's this strange magnetic fields, and also this is like a moon, like I forget what constellation or whatever it is, and then also like some of the crop circles you see, right? So it's very unusual, right? I don't believe that this was the cuts are so, but they actually use the best kind of equipment that you can make these kind of cuts now, and none of them could duplicate this. They could get close, but they couldn't get the actual or this of course strange magnetic properties that they have. So here's what I suggest. I suggest that because Yahweh uses all kinds of materials, that these flying saucers, like a lot of people have stated, may run off of some kind of magnetic sort of kinetic, like sort of wild field here. And here's my suggestion. What if that there's numerous ones of these, right? And this is like and so they're all in a circle. The guy now places this one, and these are convenient because they don't want them to ever break. So they have this magnetic field inside charged, right? And that so that these stones will last forever, right? Where there's no malfunctioning of breakage here, and I suggest that they got them in a pile of a giant circle that was in the spaceship, that somehow when you put the last one in, it starts some kind of kinetic magnetic sort of turning, and you can adjust it by making it go faster or slower on some other sort of contraption that is making these things spin around, and they continuously will keep doing this even if the ship's stopped, so that it never stops, but that it's not going to raise anything yet. and this, and then could make you to these great speeds and that. And he's just like any other manufacturer, he's put his symbol of this sort of thing on it. So I don't know if somebody made them for Yahweh or he done it himself, or it's another extraterrestrial guys that are similar, other entities in the sky. And but whatever the case, I suggest that this is an actual. That's why they make these insignias in them. It's to identify the part and the stone that's going to be connected in this thing to make it move up and down. So I really believe this. Like I mean, I don't see why a extraterrestrial group with all this high advanced technology that got these amazing ships and all this sort of thing like that that can zoop 100,000 miles in a second and all that kind of wacky stuff that you see, right? Well, why would you have rocks on board like that? So the only other explanation too, I suppose, is feasible, that the aliens like us have keepsakes and things like that, and maybe the guy carved it out with some kind of strange laser beam like contraption that they may have, and this kinds of things like that, right? And this was something like, maybe because this constellation exists or whatever, like that kind of thing, like they show, right? Maybe the guy just done that going by it, and hey, maybe I found this rock on a planet and I'll make something with it. Like, but I doubt this. Because it's so intricate and a lot of hard work here. This is extremely powerful hard stone. It's very hard to cut and that sort of thing like that. So I suggest that why these magnetic properties are in them, it could be that each stone either has the same insignia, they all are similar, that once you put a certain amount in there, this will start causing this effect, or that each one may have different magnetic or anti-magnetic sorts, like some kind of thing where somehow by pushing and pulling or whatever, once this thing is put into place, it can start making these revolutions and they won't stop, right? And that sort of thing like that. They'll only slow down or speed up, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, but I mean, very interesting. Anyways, you got to admit, we'll continue this on in the next show there with a bunch of other sort of items and things like that. But I got to say that especially Joan of Arc and really, I mean, there's something to it. I mean, when you got these in historic records, again, I just don't believe that kingdoms pay people to sit there all day and say, okay, I want you for the next 20 years to make sure that all these books, you keep meticulous records of our pretend dragons and our pretend, you know, this and that, and I want you to mark all these down and cost so much. Like, do you see how silly that this is, right? Like, I mean, why would people make pharmaceutical books, hundreds of pages, and gazillions of these have been found over the centuries, right? And some still alive, like in archives and this sort of thing like that, and that sort of thing. That why would this be, right? Like, I mean, it's only logical if it's real, right? Like, so again, these things, I mean, it's just simply eventually man started wiping these things out because they were hunted. I mean, every person in the universe would love to own, I'm sure, a any person that's a fan of a dragon, right? Like, I mean, if there was such thing as a dragon claw that was in some ancient Chinese relic someplace, and they said that I could purchase this, if I had $1 trillion, I would paid all kinds of money to get this thing, right? Right, because I want to wear it. I mean, then I know I'm always, he's there right with me, that the mighty dragon really existed, right? And that sort of thing like this. I've looked for this ultimate proof since a child, but I've never seen a mention anywhere in historic records I can find. I have unicorns, so I could probably, if you could prove that this unicorn horn doesn't belong to any known species, that means that at least the story has real basis, right? If you went to the Queen of Poland's sort of chair, right? Her chair weighs way more. They claim, some couple of skeptics claim that they were fake narwhal ones, and they put them in there, right? Totally ridiculous. The chair, with the weights of these things, they weigh massive, way more than what you could if you just put in narwhal sort of horns, right? They're all the same. They're solid. That there's a couple that are variants, about three or four that I saw that could be a different kind of a unicorn from a different area or whatever, or some other creature that maybe wasn't a unicorn that isn't known anymore or whatever. But none of these horns can be identified. They're super heavy and solid, right? And this queen went to giant. They used to have hunts, right? So why would you put in that the queen went out for a hunt today for the and all this stuff? And you really believe that these people just did this for something to do? I find these again ludicrous, right? So please, people, the general public needs to be way more educated that what you believe are fairy tales, actually, most of them have real basis. They're not imaginary in the general sense. A lot they might be exaggerated or different things, but in general, the items always have some kind of basis of reality to them almost every time. And the ones that are fake are very easily understood why they were made fake, to take care of the legend, to keep it going and to sell it, where the person thinks it's a unicorn horn, but really it was Betsy or Fred the bull's horn, right? This sort of thing, right? Like, so you could see that also, of course, there'd be skeptics over the ages because of people selling them fake things and stuff too as well, right? But that has nothing to do with the creature's real or not. It's simply, you know what I mean? It's like people I see down here in Ottawa all the time. There's guys that'll drive up to you in a van, and there's like three or four of these guys from Iraq and that, and what they'll do is they'll say, "Oh, no money, no money. We need to feed our children," and that, and the guy's driving around in $50,000 van, more than what I would purchase, right? Sort of thing. But then he'll pull out these gold bracelets and all kinds of stuff, and you can talk this guy down to $10, and he's still willing to sell it to you. I mean, really, like as if, right? They can't be real, right? Like, but they look pretty good. I must admit, they had stamped them in them and that, or that somehow people smuggles out stolen gold from other countries, and is willing to get rid of it at a lower cost because of, accountability or something. But even at that, usually they want like $100, $200. They'll start, and then, but you can actually, one guy for fun, I said, all I got is $10 on me, right? He says, like this, and I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to need the bus, and I just laughed, right? But I just get a kick out of them that they do this, right? And I understand. I mean, the guy needs a few bucks, right? But I mean, obviously fraudulent, right? So this is what I'm saying. I mean, Christian relics that are not the original ones that may actually have these supernatural powers, but there's all kinds of copies of them, right? So this is the real deal here, and so I suggest that Yahweh would use, even in a modern technology UFO, if you got something that can control the speed of things from a natural rock, right? This isn't going to break the same. It's never going to bust, right? So it's more reliable, where the main part that you need it for to fly or not, right? This kind of thing. So this is what I suggest, that maybe some of the stones are more rounder, and that, and some that are different things. The kinetic like energy would flip to push to the next, to the next, to the next, and by revolving it faster underneath or something like that, you can control the speed and maybe reach outrageous speeds in the universe, right? And that sort of thing like that. But anyways, we'll continue on with this in the sort of the next shows and things like that. Hopefully, I can get the Muskrat Lake Monster film developed finally, that sort of thing like that. Some more magic items, little known Sasquatch types. I got some real authentic sea monster films that again could withstand the Joe Nichols or anybody. They're not fake. This is real. and it's not a whale or any known animal on this planet, right? Sort of thing like that. So if you got any sightings, you can either contact me at the show or cryptozoology sightings at protonmail.com. And hope everybody has a great day. So take care.